I'd like to call to order the special ed subcommittee meeting. And I'm going to turn it right over to Ms. Graham and her team for our special education rights and responsibilities presentation.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight. We are here to present our annual Parents' Rights and School Responsiveness presentation. Here with me this evening are Special Education Coordinator Jennifer Leary, Team Administrators Jill Karanis, Katie Carey, and Lisa Chan Ionetta. Oh, sorry, someone's got to advance. Want me to do it? Just click.
I'll
do it for you. I'll just click. There you go.
There we go.
So the goal of our presentation is to provide information so that parents understand their child's rights and the special education process. It will also talk about the collaboration between families and school personnel, and we will certainly like to enhance the parent and school personnel so that everyone can participate in the special education process as knowledgeable partners.
So let's start with special education laws. The main law is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's also known as IDEA. In Massachusetts, special education law used to be called Chapter 766, and that falls under the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education. Otherwise, we use DESE. People throw that term around a lot. And it governs much of what we do in special education. So these laws help to protect students and ensure that students with disabilities that are eligible to receive special education services are maintained in the least restrictive environment. These laws also help to protect students with disabilities on IEPs and to ensure progress that is made within their goals and their IEPs. Okay. When is a student eligible for special education? A student is eligible for special education when the three main points are true. So one is that a student has one or more of the following, like federal guideline disabilities that Katie's going to talk about. A student may not be making progress in school as a result of their disability. And if the student requires specially designed instruction in order to make effective progress in school. Katie's going to talk about the different disabilities next.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Lisa. This slide provides the list of 13 disabilities that affect a student's educational progress. Autism is the first one, and it's a developmental disability that significantly affects verbal and nonverbal communication and social interactions. Students identified with this disability are taught both in and out of our district, and they can vary in special education service needs from full inclusion to resource room to pull out and push in therapies to substantially separate programming. And additionally, students are out of the district at a collaborative or a private school setting. Our CARES program staff specialize in this disability and track progress with work samples, progress reports, and data collection daily. Developmental delay, these students are 3 to 9 years old, whose learning capacity is limited, impaired, or delayed in the areas of expressive and receptive language, cognitive abilities, physical functioning, social, emotional, or self-help skills. Next is intellectual impairments. These students have difficulty performing cognitive tasks, functions, or problem solving is significantly limited or impaired. These students demonstrate a slower rate of learning, disorganized patterns of learning, difficulty with adaptive behavior, and/or difficulty understanding abstract concepts. Students with this disability require a slower rate of learning. Our newly opened RDLC and special education Special Needs Learning Center teachers and professionals demonstrate this through multisensory, concrete, and real-life educational opportunities. Excuse me. The next three disabilities are all sensory impairments. That includes hearing impairments, visual impairments, and deafblindness. These disabilities can affect a student's communication, development, and educational progress. These students' special education services are provided with the assistance of a teacher of the deaf, educational audiologist, orientation and mobility specialist, or a teacher of the visually impaired. These specialists work with the general education teachers as well as special education staff to provide curriculum both auditorily and virtually or in any manner so that the students can access the curriculum just as their peers. Multiple disabilities can also be grouped in here, and this includes students with one or more of the Massachusetts defined disabilities. Next, the neurological impairment is defined as a limited or impaired nervous system. This affects the use of memory, cognitive functioning, sensory and motor skills, speech and language, organizational skills, social skills, or basic life functions. One example of this disability is traumatic brain injury. No, still, yep. Okay. Emotional impairment, excuse me, is the inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. An inability to maintain satisfactory relationships with peers and teachers. This includes students with pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression and is demonstrated over a long period of time and adversely affects their educational performance and progress. Numerous counselors and/or teachers in the district use best practice strategies like a circles curriculum to address these emotional needs of these students. Next is the communication impairment, and this includes students who have a limited, impaired, or delayed ability to use expressive and/or receptive language in areas of speech, articulation, or voice, also conveying or understanding spoken, written, or symbolic language. An example of this disability is stuttering or impaired articulation that also impedes their progress. Physical impairments is a physical capacity to move, coordinate actions, and perform physical activities. One example of this disability is cerebral palsy, or any impairment that adversely affects the student's educational performance. Next is the health disability. And a health impairment includes chronic or acute problems such as asthma, attention deficit disorder, diabetes, epilepsy, heart conditions, or any other health impairment that affects a student's learning. Lastly, we have a specific learning disability, or SLD. In general, it is a term used for a disorder for one or more of the basic understanding or the using of language spoken, written, and/or can manifest with the imperfect ability to listen, speak, read, write, spell, or do math calculations. Examples of this disability are brain injury, dyslexia, and developmental aphasia. Students with this disability struggle with classes with heavy reading requirements and benefit from support in all academic areas in special education services outlined in their IEPs. And now Julie will talk about what is special education.
So special education means that a student requires specially designed instruction in order to meet the individual needs of that student. Specially designed instruction can mean that the info the student is taught, or it changes how that student is taught or how that student demonstrates the knowledge that they do have. Special education may consist of only related services such as speech, OT, or PT that are necessary for the student to make effective progress and in the general education curriculum. Special education is always designed to meet each individual student's needs. A unique feature of special education is that it's not cookie cutter and that it is never a one-size-fits-all model. Special education is designed to meet an individual student's needs by addressing their disability and providing the support that that student needs in order to make progress and become more independent in demonstrating the skills that they do have. As you can see from this illustration, we emphasize that special education is only one type of support that may be available to a student. Special education is not a location. It's a service that may be delivered in a variety of settings and in a variety of ways, ranging from support services in a general education classroom to services provided in a separate setting from the school. With special education, there are very specific timelines that must be followed. If your child requires a special education evaluation, then from the time that consent is accepted, the school district has 45 working days to complete the evaluation and to convene the team in order to consider eligibility. You have the right to ask and receive the written assessments 2 days in advance of the meeting. If a student is found eligible, at that same meeting, the team will develop an IEP. In most cases, the team will determine the appropriate placement to provide the services that are being proposed. Within 10 days of that meeting, the team must provide you with a proposed IEP and a proposed placement. Services cannot begin until consent is received. If you do consent, as soon as the district receives your written consents, then services will begin promptly.
Thank you, Julie. IDEA has 6 foundational principles, and I will be discussing the first 3. Principle number 1 is parent and student participation. Parents have the right to participate in all special education planning and decision-making. This is an extremely important underlying principle of what we do. We want and truly value parent and guardian involvement in all aspects of the IEP process, both in the planning and in the decision-making. Parents know their child best, therefore their input is extremely valuable. Next, students are the focus of special education and the focus of all we do, so our recommendations are always student-centered. It's important that students have input and participation in helping to plan for their education and beyond. As you likely know by now, with the implementation of the new IEP, students are asked to have input at their initial IEP development as early as 3 years old. Students are also invited to their IEP meetings at age 14, or if they will be turning 14 during that IEP period. It is also the obligation of the district to make strong efforts to ensure parent and student participation. The district will always make every effort to include parents in the special education process. While face-to-face meetings are likely preferred, we'll do Google Meets or phone conferences or whichever arrangement works best for the family. If English is not the primary language of the parent, we will arrange for interpreters to be present. Our goal is to eliminate any barrier so that they remove any barriers for the family so they can be active participants in the special education process. Principle number 2 is FAPE. FAPE is free and appropriate public education. Free meaning that the education and the special education services provided are at no cost to the family. Appropriate, students on IEPs have equal access to learning. The services are specially designed to help a student progress toward meeting their specific IEP goals. Public, the services are provided by the district or under the direction of the district. And education, this encompasses preschool through high school, or in some cases till age 22, and this includes extracurricular activities. Principle number 3 is appropriate evaluation. This principle ensures that we offer appropriate evaluations to our students. The first time a student is tested to determine eligibility is called an initial evaluation. Thereafter, once eligible, students are assessed in all areas of suspected need at least every 3 years, which is called the reevaluation. Assessments that may be proposed during an evaluation include psychological assessment, which can look at both cognitive and social emotional functioning of a student, educational assessments, occupational therapy, speech and language, physical therapy, and we also can assess for vision or hearing deficits. Finally, the assessment tools need to be unbiased and specifically chosen to assess suspected area of disability. We can't rely on just one measure or tool. We need a variety of tools, and we also rely on information provided by the teachers and parents. Bias must also be considered when we are determining if a student has a specific disability. We want to make sure we are not identifying students as disabled due to socioeconomic status, race, or any other factor. And now Jen will discuss the remaining 3 principles.
Okay, principle number 4 is the Individualized Education Program, or the IEP. As you know, Massachusetts has rolled out the new IEP format this year. All of the goal of the new IEP was to make all of this required information more clear to families, and to really guide how we're going through this process, but the information itself has not changed at all. The IEP still includes parent and student concerns and their vision for the future, and really making the student concerns and vision for themselves front and center. The IEP explains student strengths and how the disability impacts their access to the curriculum, and contains SMART goals, meaning specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. The IEPs also identify specific objectives to achieve each goal and who is responsible for monitoring progress towards achieving that goal. The IEP also includes a list of services provided, the location of those services, the amount of time each service will be provided, and who is responsible for providing that service. Now on the new IEP, there's a separate listing for extended school year services when they are appropriate for students. Principle number 5 is the least restrictive environment. Discussing the least restrictive environment for our students has been a focus of many of our initiatives that we've been working on this year. Our goal is always to provide access to the general education environment as much as possible. We think long and hard about why we would remove a student from the general education environment. We do not remove students from general education classrooms solely because of a need for modifications and accommodations. Sometimes this means that interventionists, such as literacy teachers, English language teachers, OTs, PTs may go into the classroom to provide support. Removal from the general education classroom only occurs when the nature and severity of the disability requires specialized instruction that cannot be provided in a general education classroom. A move to a more restrictive classroom will only occur when we have exhausted all other options. Principle number 6 is the procedural safeguards. These are provided in a written document to families each year. The procedures that are outlined in the procedural safeguards include written notice regarding all IEP activities. This includes meeting invitations, evaluation consent forms, etc. Parents have the right to consent to or reject all or part of what is being proposed by the IEP team. This includes evaluations, services, and placement, and also includes both initial services when a student is first evaluated, as well as any changes to the student's individual education program. School is not allowed to evaluate or provide a service to a child without written parent consent, and parents have the right to revoke their consent at any time. When team members disagree on any proposed changes, then the IEP stays put to their last accepted IEP, and the student will continue to receive those services while the team works with the family to come to a resolution. Occasionally, there will be times when parents and the school are not able to reach an agreement on their own. In these cases, for the protection of the parents and the students, the problem resolution system, mediation, and due process procedures are all in place. This includes contacting the Office of Quality Assurance and the Board of Special Education Appeals. Going through this process is always a last resort. We try everything possible not to reach this point, but this process is in place to assist in solving problems by a neutral party. Timelines are in place to ensure that school completes tasks and parents receive all information in a timely manner. And all student records are confidential. Staff receive training on confidentiality every year. And information is only shared with the staff members who need to know that information about the student, and it's only shared with outside providers with written parental consent. So for example, we may have students who receive different therapies in private clinics after school, and we can only communicate with those clinics when we have written consent from the parent. And finally, parents have the right to receive copies of evaluation reports 2 days prior to the meeting upon request, and that request is now written directly on the evaluation consent form so that parents can check it off when they're returning that form so the team knows ahead of time to have them ready.
That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you all very much. Do you have any questions?
I
Ms.
have a
Lieber?
couple.
All right, hold on one sec. Get you unmuted.
Thank you. So I'm wondering, just a ballpark.
Sure.
How many students do we have who have multiple disabilities?
Actually, the category of multiple disabilities? Oh,
Of that list that we saw, that have multiple issues from that list?
meaning that they have both a primary and a secondary
Yes.
disability? I would say, I honestly, I don't know the answer to that, but I would say it's quite common for I would say at least half of our students. You know, it's quite often, for example, for a child to have a specific learning disability with a secondary of communication or
Right.
a sensory with a secondary of specific learning. It's not uncommon. I can't say for sure. I can absolutely
I
get
just
that
wanted to,
information
you
for
answered my question just the way, yeah, I'm happy with that. I didn't want to for sure answer.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah.
wondering, it just seems to me, from the kiddos that I know, that could possibly be true, that there would be people with
Sure. When we're really looking at students, when we identify what is the primary, we truly look at which disability most significantly impacts their access to
their
learning.
progress, yeah. I also have a question about the new IEP is working out. I want to wait to hear from the parents on that. Glad it's working out for you guys. though.
It's working out. We definitely have, been navigating some
new.
glitches as with any new program. But to piggyback off of what Ms. Leary said, it really does share all the same information. It's just laid out differently. I find it to be more informative because stuff has its specific spots and you're not digging for things like you were before.
Yeah, that's great. On the 10th slide, you talk about the extracurriculars, and I know this has been on our mind for a long time, and I'm wondering if you can give us an idea of some of the extracurriculars that we're doing, or if we've added any, and what age groups they're addressing.
Sure. So most of the extracurricular activities were shared with you during the school SIPs. And what we are doing now is we are providing, if a student with a disability wants to attend, and in order to attend those programs, they do require additional supports, we are providing those supports for them. For example, we just had 2 students that let me know that they want to join the play over at Quincy High, so we have a paraprofessional that's going with them for that. We have a number of students that want to participate. We have a couple of students that do the swim team from the NQ swim team over at Lincoln Hancock. We have a paraprofessional goes with them. Some of our students that want to participate don't require additional support services, but oftentimes they'll check in with the teacher ahead of time just to make sure that if there are any accommodations that need to be met, that those are being met as well.
I'm glad, that's great. I'm glad that those
It
things are
is.
available to
It
all of our
is.
kids. I really am. That's
Yep.
terrific.
Yep.
And my last thing is the problem resolution system.
Yes.
There was a series in the Globe earlier this school year about some real tragic stories about people having so much trouble. Nothing like I've ever heard in Quincy, really, but it was just heartbreaking to see what was going on for some of these families. So how are we how does that problem resolution system work out for us? And how often do we have to use it?
So the problem resolution is when a family files with them, they then contact the district. Typically, it goes to Superintendent Mulvey and myself. They do an initial investigation to kind of get the district's perspective. And then they also, at the same time, reach out to the family and get their perspective. And then based on that kind of initial inquiry, they may file what's called a request for local report, where they will request specific documentation, specific timelines, real detailed information about what they are looking to gather from that. It has, in my opinion, it's an effective way if parents do have concerns. Thankfully, in my time as director, I've maybe a handful of times it's happened, and it's usually pretty easily remedied.
Resolved, yeah, that's
Yep.
great, thank you. It was a tragic series of
It is.
articles. I don't know if you read those articles in the Globe, but it was really tragic what has happened to some families across the state.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you very much, I'm good.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Lebo asked about the new IEP, which I was going to ask as well. How has it been going collecting, I know the goals from the students, they had to all have a student goal on there. Has that been
yeah.
going well? I know that was kind of a source of how is that going to work, especially with the younger kiddos?
It's actually really fun. It kind of gives us insight as to what their goal for themselves are and what they want to focus on. I really enjoy going to the high school meetings because it gives us an indication of kind of who they really are as young adults. With the little guys, we definitely get some kind of off-the-wall answers about, wanting to be painting all day and dancing all day, which at that point, it's pretty awesome. That's what they should be doing. So I find it enjoyable. That being said, I'm not in every single meeting, but I think it's a really nice way to start a meeting. It kind of, again, it refocuses on who this meeting is for. It's not about the adults at the table. It's about that child that we're speaking about.
That's really great. And for the high school kids, when they're verbalizing what they want to do, does it ever kind of direct maybe like preparing them for after high school? Do they
Absolutely.
share things that they want to do? And does that kind of tweak what you're able to offer for them or try to
Yes.
different ways to meet that goal for them?
It does, and especially, given that we have such an incredible array of CVTE programs, but also some more specifically designed classes. So if we know, for example, a student wants to go into, filming or computer sciences or, plumbing, that, we have those opportunities for them as soon as possible. Or if there's a child that we know they want to go into high school to study accounting, we make sure that their math classes are line up with that goal for themselves.
That's great. It sounds like a really great way to, kind of encourage that, that conversation so that. you
It's
can get-
always been part of the IEP process, but now it's at the beginning and really does drive the flow of the IEP for those older students.
That's great. And similarly, I'd love to hear how the parents are feeling that's going. So that's great. And I'm really glad to hear that two of the kiddos want to be in the play, the musical, that's coming up. I know that Mr. Doucette's always really welcoming of
Very much so.
all students kind of coming and being a part of it. So I'm really glad about that. So that's great news.
Can't wait
Thank
to
you all
see
very
it.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and now I'm excited to hear from for a second item on the agenda, from our Quincy CPAC team, our Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Maybe adjusting the mics a bit. Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for being here, and we're excited to hear what you guys have going on this year.
I know, we were not sure who to send the slideshow to, and then he was like, Laura Owens. I'm like, we sent everything to Laura Owens. We figured it was one thing we didn't have to send you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. Melissa and I are here representing the board tonight, and we're just going to go over our goals for this year and what we've been working on so far, and where we're planning to go with the rest of the year. Are you going to control that, or do you want me? So our board this year, we have a couple of I have one new person on, and we've moved our positions around a little bit. I am currently the president. I'm solo this year. And Emily Daggett has moved up to our vice president position. And then we have Amy Blue as our secretary, and Melissa here is our public relations officer. And we have Darlene Wilson, who is our treasurer, and Taryn is our new board member, and she is our board member at large. She kind of does everything. She just does everything pretty much for us. She floats around. You want to do this one?
Sure. So the way we organize the slideshow is to go over what our goals were and to kind of give you an update on where we are with these goals. So our first goal was related to providing resources and educational opportunities.
Because we did a survey at the very beginning of the school year, and a large percentage of our parents selected supporting my child's mental health as a topic of interest. So that was what shaped some of our goals. We host caregiver groups where parents and family members can share resources and ask each other questions. We have another one coming up this month. And we are continuing to host educational presentations. We have hopes to bring in, originally we wanted to bring in a whole full panel for mental health related topics in the spring, but we may just focus on one or two this year, and then maybe next year we'll do a
big topic.
It's a big topic. And do you want to go?
Oh, yeah, sure. So our second goal is to provide training opportunities for staff and caregivers. Like Melissa said, we did a pretty extensive survey over the summer where we were asking parents specific questions about what they would like to see. So a lot of them were looking for trainings. They were looking for help on how to do things within their home to support their student, whether it was based on what was happening in the classroom or based on behaviors or any kind of supports they needed outside, just to give them a little control over what they were doing with their kids at home, and maybe trying to keep it regulating across from school to home, because sometimes that difference is pretty significant when parents don't have a full understanding on what's going on at school. It's hard for them to carry over at home. So we have been looking at doing training opportunities for staff as well as caregivers, because we thought it was a great way for caregivers and staff to kind of get some opportunities to build skills or learn new skills, or if there's something out there that might be interesting and helpful to students that's new, it might be something we can help with. So we did host a presentation by Chuck Zuko of the Bloom Method on the new IEP. And we invited parents and professionals to come and be a part of that. And he did a great job. He was really great about explaining the new IEP to parents and giving them a background on what it looks like, because it's pretty significant difference in way it looks. But I will say from my part so far, I really like it, especially as a parent of an older student. I think it really helps to provide more information about what their focus should be on and what they might be interested in the future and how to shape their future. But so we are constantly working right now to look for new opportunities for special education staff and parents and caregivers. We're working on that right now. Our spring programs are not fully up yet for presentations. It's a work in progress. But we are hoping to have some really great presentations going forward. You want to take on the next one?
All right, so our third goal was just to continue engagement with the preschool programs and out-of-district programs and the Learning Center students and families. So we did a survey for our out-of-district families, and I feel like you should speak to that one a little more than me.
Okay.
But and then we also continue to solicit parent feedback. We were able to, mostly Sarah and Emily will meet to discuss the Rick D. Christophile Learning Center and how things are going. We were also able to host a gingerbread decorating event, and that was a success. And last year we did a Valentine's Day event with preschool families. Oh, and also the gingerbread decorating event, we were able to include preschool this time. We did 3 separate sessions, and it was a hit. And then we're also going to do a Valentine's Day event again this year.
Yeah.
But if there's anything you wanted to add about the out-of-district feedback.
Yeah, so I think the focus this year, and I know it's personal to me, is out-of-district students. It's hard to really connect with them in the same way that you do with the in-district students, because they are not on your radar every single day. They are in different towns, different cities. My son has been out-of-district for over 8 years now. And so it can be very disconnecting for parents and families to be not in the same town where their child is going to school. And especially as they get older, I'm finding it's hard because my son, he will be 20 in May. So I'm literally 2 years, I believe 3 months and a certain number of days away from him jumping off a cliff, basically, and us going into a whole new world. And I feel like a lot of times when you're not in the place where you live, if your child's not going to school there, it's a very daunting task. And knowing that he doesn't have a community in his own town it's scary, it's sad, it's frustrating. So we really wanted to start trying to reach out to out-of-district students and families and see how we could build communication with them and maybe help to bring them towards us and see if we can help work towards what their next steps are going to be. I mean, everybody has a different path. We don't know who's doing what, but it just helps to have a community behind you when you're dealing with some of these, honestly, daunting issues. So yeah, that's kind of where the out-of-district survey has come from. And I will be honest in saying we didn't get a ton of response. So we are trying to find other avenues as to how we can reach families from out-of-district areas. So that's a goal for me. Oh, yeah. And this is a big job for me right now, is I am really working towards continuing engagement with transitional age students and families. We did an online survey to families with students on IEPs. Transition planning is an important topic for caregivers. That was from our survey over the summer. 55.7% selected transition planning preparing for my child's future when asked what topics of interest are you interested in learning more about. And we have tried to bring presentations over the past couple of years about the transition planning process and what that entails. And I've tried to learn more about what the actual education to families is through the city, through the public school system. And I know that once 14 comes along, there is a plan, like trying to put a plan in place for transitional planning. But a lot of times, parents don't receive a ton of information about what the process is going to be for them. Because as a parent, once your child turns 18 and they are legally an adult, you have to know what your steps are, whether you're just a supportive parent helping them through the process, or whether you have to take steps for legal action to become a guardian, or there's now a partial guardian where you kind of support your supportive guardian. But there's different steps you have to take, and you really have to be aware of it so you can start planning for what you're going to do when they turn 18, because your level of connection to that becomes different because they are now in charge of their adults. That's their and if you have a child that's in the 18 to 22 program, whether it's the LEAP program at North or the Quincy College program, there's a lot going on, and I'm only speaking out of personal experience right now. DDS is really focusing on creating your own support system. So they're putting it on parents to create a plan for their child when they turn 22. And that may be trying to find a place for them to go, a day program. For me, I'll be very honest, Jack is profoundly autistic. He needs a lot of support. He would go to a day program or a day hab where he would need constant support throughout the day. And that's what our goal is for him. But since COVID, the amount of day programs even available, the wait lists are years long. There are a lot of parents who are looking for either group home situations or some kind of out of living situation where they could be more independent. Wait lists are years long. It's a very, very, I don't want to sound like a black cloud, but it's really scary right now. So I think having parents be aware of what's going forward is really important, because even if the child is able to go out and get a job, they still may need support from a financial standpoint. They may need support from social emotional standpoint, and really trying to figure out where DDS fits into that, where they fit into that, and how as parents they can figure out what level of need they are going to need. So it's a good conversation to have. So I'm really trying to find how I can create some kind of subgroup almost of CPAC, or some kind of subgroup just for families of students between the ages of 14 to 22. So I will say to anyone who is listening, anyone who's watching, if you know someone who may need that kind of support, please point them in our direction. We really are trying to connect as much as possible to those families, because it's vitally important. And DDS, they do the best they can, but they are inundated. And over the next 5 years, it's going to be 10 times bigger than it is right now. So I just think parents need to, I know personally, just from within the district, we've had, I think, a couple of students who have aged out in this year already and don't have programs in place yet. They're doing their own, creating something within, which is very difficult to create something for your child every single day, especially if you're a working parent. If you're someone who has other children, there's a lot going on. To be so focused solely on, it's just, there's a lot going on. So I would really love to build some connection for these families. And I would love to work with the people in the LEAP program, in the programs that are running the 18 to 22, the Quincy College programs, to help figure out how we can bridge the gap so that families and these students can work together and really start making plans for their futures. Because the IEP does a lot, but the 22 that's a jump off. And once you jump off it, you're kind of floating around on your own. So I'm trying to give you something positive to end on. We did have a great time at Gingerbread House decorating, and we did it at the RDLC this year, which was great. We haven't done an event there yet, and it was really great. So we were really excited to have it. We had some great families come, and I'm going to just say this right now. The high school culinary group are amazing. Every single year they make us gingerbread houses, and every single year I ask for more, and every single year they do it. And those high school kids are amazing, and we appreciate them so much, and we just owe them a lot. So it's a great group over there. So any questions for us?
Thank you both so much. Ms. Lebo.
Yeah, I am so dismayed about the 22-year-olds myself. I mean, it is like falling off a cliff, and MRC used to be much more involved, and DDS used to have much more involvement. And I know that they lost a lot of staffing during COVID, but I just don't see the same kind of effort being put in by them that used to be there. I really don't,
I'll be really honest, it's parents. Parents are putting in the effort now. They've realized that it isn't going to be the state that's going to save them or create. So, I mean, I know for myself, I've been independently looking into what I could create within this city for him with his own little community. And if I have to, build it from the ground up, because it may be the only chance of anything actually happening in a pace that will work for him. I mean, I would love to keep him in his school for the next 25 years, but I know that that is not a possibility. So I have to try and figure out the next best thing. And you want them to be safe and happy, and a lot of staffing is the problem. I mean, it really is. It's a very difficult thing to keep a program staffed. So, and I think that's gonna be an ongoing problem, but.
I think it's great that parents are trying to do something, but I think that the state sort of like punching it in. I just don't feel comfortable with the effort that they've been putting into it since this change has happened. I think that what Desi's doing with the IEP is great.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think having that statement up front about what you want to do, and the school system working in every way they possibly can
And
to
especially
get,
giving those kids a voice from that age is so huge. Even if they're nonverbal, you have a way to give them
sure do.
access, and just realizing that that access is there is amazing. And I think for parents and students, I think it's a huge upgrade, and it's a great thing that needed to happen.
I'd love to have a conversation sometimes about what more the city can do. I think not the school system so much, but what more can the community do?
Oh, I will have that conversation with you. I have a list.
Really, I think that we should try to talk about that, what the community can do to help with this, because the community also has needs, and so many of these people coming out could be wonderful, integrated within the community both ways, so for everybody, so.
My dream is a Kennedy Center for people with special needs. That is absolutely my goal and dream. The Kennedy Center that sits on the right at the front of Squantum.
Well,
I would love that to be a place, create a place, same type of thing, place for people with special needs to get support, to get help, to get all of that in one space. I think that would just be,
have socialization and physical
that's
education.
my dream, and that.
You've heard it here today.
Yes, the layout is there. I just don't know how, I have to work on how to get there, but that's what my
You have to form
goal.
a 501 and try to get some funding.
Yeah, I have to figure it out. But yes, there's a lot of pieces to it, but I feel like it's possible. And I feel like Quincy is the perfect place to start, because Quincy is such a vibrant community. It's such an involved
And
community.
so responsive, too.
And they are responsive, and I think the amount of students that we will having coming out in the next 5 years, especially, because I know my son's class at the collaborative, 4 out of 5 are probably from Quincy. So his class, the 2 classes behind him even, have a good number of Quincy students that will be leaving that program in a few years, and they're going to need somewhere to go.
Have you
So-
heard of any models of this? Other places in the country?
Norwell has something called the Friendship House, which was created completely by mothers. And it's a really well-run program. It's been going for about 15 years now. They have a respite program now. They have all kinds of wonderful programs. But I'm kind of using them as a benchmark for what I want to use as an example. But that's the one I know closest to us in Norwell. I toured it last year, and it's amazing.
I'd like to see that. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your work, for all you do, and I love the surveys. I mean, I know, I'm sorry the out-of-district people didn't respond as much, but
We'll keep trying. We're gonna
maybe they're happy, so who knows, it could be a good thing, too, so,
Yeah.
thank you, Mrs. Purdy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, my nephew actually goes to the Friendship House, and it's a great, when you were describing that, it sounded a lot like the program that he's
Yeah,
at there.
that's my
so-
model.
Yeah, so when you were talking, it sounded very much like that. So, yeah, that sounds fantastic and much needed. And I just, I'm constantly impressed with the partnership that CPAC has with QPS, with the special ed team at QPS, and just how well you work together. I know you meet monthly, and try to work on those goals and supplement what we're able to do, but also inform their work and let them know what parents are needing, what they're looking for. And I think it's really unique that we have that partnership between you guys, and I'm so grateful for it. And also the volunteer work, the volunteer time that you all put in with special needs children of your own is just so admirable that you put in the time to try to make it better for other families too. So I so appreciate you and the team of officers you had on that first slide. I mean, dynamite,
Yes, they are.
parents in the city, and I just I definitely appreciate you guys. I was just curious, kind of as you were talking, the transitional information that you do have, that you do give out. Do we, and maybe this is more of a question from Mrs. Graham, but does QPS give that information out as well, or is that kind of just on CPAC that's giving that transitional information out as to, what might be happening, like the guardianship information, that type of stuff? Is that given to parents through QPS as well? Yes, okay. So, yeah, definitely, I can just foresee some parent academies and different things like that, maybe a presentation that can be up on our website, your website, to just inform and can just get better and better and grow so that that information's there for families.
Yeah, because even Social Security is a huge one because once you turn 18, the students are eligible for Social Security, and that is a huge help to them and benefit, especially if they need to go on Mass Health or any other or they need an extra bit of health insurance. It's a great thing to set them up with once they turn 18, and even if they are independent, like depending on their levels of independence, they can apply for Social Security at 18 and will get coverage to help them to supplement if they can't work a full-time, because a lot of these students don't work full-time jobs. They work partial, maybe 4 hours a day or part-time, depending on what their level of interest and ability are. So I think being aware of what they can apply for themselves even is a great thing to kind of give them an information session on, because that's another process that takes a lot of time and it's a lot of paperwork.
Sarah could do a parent academy, honestly.
At
She's
this
got all this
point, I'm pretty
information.
much, I'm living it. So I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of people give me a ton of support and shown me a lot of information. So I'm really trying to just pass it forward, because this is a very important part of life, and it's a fundamental part that parents, like I said, it is daunting. And I have 3 other children, one who's applying to college, who finished her last application today for college. And I am just, your brain can only take so much. So you're just really trying to do the best you can at all times. So, but the more information you have, the easier it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that wealth of information you have after, Jack's done and moving on, we want to make sure that families still get that and still benefit from that even
Yeah, and
after.
I think having
So,
parent support is
Yeah.
good, because it's easier to hear it from someone who's been through it or going through it and can really follow your lead and help you, guide you in what you may need. Because even though we're all living different paths, we're all fundamentally dealing with the same types of issues. So having someone else who's done it makes a huge difference in making your life a little bit easier, or just being able to call someone and be like, hey, this is really crappy. What do I need to do? What should I go? What's my next step?
Right, and I know a lot of your meetings have those kind of open times to kind of talk about that
Well, our
stuff, so that's
caregiver
great.
support group has been great for that. We've
Right.
had a lot of parents come on.
Yep.
And they just want to either talk for a few minutes about what they're dealing with, and then people start sharing resources, and that's a huge thing. The more resources and access you have, the better off you are.
Okay. And I do love that you're trying to reach out to out-of-district families, even if they don't know that they need that community. Just the fact that you're trying to reach out to them, I think is great. Do you want to share your website for anyone watching at home that wanted to
Oh, yeah.
connect? I don't know if it's on there.
Yeah, it is. I just never remember what the,
It's www.quincycpac.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have it on our slides. but-
yeah, but yeah.
Google
QuincyCPAC.com.
Quincy CPAC and you'll
Yeah.
find them.
There's a link on the Quincy Public Schools website
Okay,
to the CPAC website.
Thank you, Laura.
thank you. All right, anything else?
All right.
Thank you both very, very much.
Thank you both.
And that is our agenda tonight. I think we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.